Okay, what is up guys? This is MC Squared back again with a little bit of a more interesting video. Now, it is June 13th, 2016, which is the exact date of the Worldwide Developers Conference 2016 for Apple. And in fact, as you can see, it literally just ended. And these are kind of my first impressions. I don't know if I'll go through and do a full review or even explain kind of all the software that was seen. But this is just kind of my first impressions, what I thought of it, and what I think about Apple in general. Now, the Worldwide Developers Conference, for those of you who don't know, is basically, or at least the one in June, is mainly a software game. Originally, a few years back, it was kind of a hardware game. It's where we kind of would see newer iPhones, but of course, this was years ago. Now it's more of a software game, and that's exactly what it was. This year, Apple literally talked about software for every single platform they have: watchOS, tvOS, iOS, and macOS, not OS 10. That was kind of a little bit of a thing that kind of made fun of there because they changed the name to macOS. Still an interesting change. Now, the one that had probably the least amount of changes was by far tvOS. Didn't see that much big changes. If anything, the biggest thing it saw was some Siri enhancements, the ability to make the background darker, and pretty much that's about it. In addition to a new app for your iPhone that is supposed to resemble the Siri remote very much so. Those are pretty much it. It was kind of the one that they didn't put too much into, which makes sense. It's the TV. Not too many people own the Apple TV. It's kind of the one least selling of the four platforms, but anyways, the next biggest one that we saw a bunch of changes for was watchOS. Now, one big change that Apple immediately talked about, like right off the bat, and it's one that's probably the coolest. Now I'm going to give you an example of this. So I'm going to tap on a random app. World Clock. It's taking a while to load, and this is exactly what Apple did. They showed kind of a demo of an app being opened, how long it took, and basically whenever they did it with watchOS 3, it was snappy. watchOS 3 is supposed to be very snappy with their apps. They found a way to finally make apps be quicker on the Apple Watch, which is great because I'm someone who is always so annoyed by the how long it takes for the apps to load. Sorry, lost my train of thought there, but that was one really cool feature that I saw that I think is going to be a really big selling point. The second thing that I saw that was really cool for the watch that interested me was that Apple is going to do a lot of rehauling to the health, and this is kind of a double-edged sword. If you use the health features on it, then it's cool. I personally use them, and the features that they are bringing to it are things that I am interested in. Like, for instance, new watch faces that are going to have the rings in there, so you can see your rings more clearly, know when everything's clearing up. They also are adding a new app that's supposed to be for breathing. That seems a little gimmicky to me, but I'm someone who's always interested to be healthier, and I think that's one really cool thing. In addition to that, of course, watch faces. They are releasing a few new ones that are pretty cool, I'm not going to lie. They're quite interesting. Another thing Apple's doing with the watch, of course, I'm going to try and go over as many features as I can, but I might forget a few, so don't blame me if I do. This. I always hated the Friends button because I never used it, and this is something that just got to me. I was like, why does Apple keep having this on? No one uses this. A lot of people that I know who have Apple Watches don't use it. Well, today that changed. Today, this is officially kind of a dock, I guess you could say, and basically what it does is it pops up, and then your like recent glances show up. It still has glances, but these are a little bit more quicker, and they refresh as the button is pressed. So that's pretty interesting. That's something that I found to be really cool, and I thought was pretty neat that they were finally making changes to that. Surprisingly, no new bands. We thought we were going to see a couple of new bands, but no, it was really just a hardware game. One thing Apple did, for those of you who are handicapped, they added new handicap features for it, which I think is really cool because now Apple Watch is kind of the only watch that officially is a fitness tracker for those who are disabled. So basically, what it does is instead of tracking your steps, it tracks your movements on the wheel, on your wheels, and I thought that's really cool because that means those who are disabled don't have to get discouraged from being active. I think that's so cool of Apple to do, and I felt like Apple really brought it at this Worldwide Developers Conference, which is a lot of innovative things, that being one of them. In addition to this, I'm trying to think of what else they added to the Apple Watch. A bunch of new watch faces, one of which is Minnie Mouse. They talked about that for a little bit of time. But in addition to that, just a lot of welcome new kind of refinements, changes to the Apple Watch. Not too big, but enough to where it's noticeable. Changes are definitely noticeable. Apps are a lot quicker, and it's just an all-around better app or feature device now. Ugh, can't talk. But anyways, that's the Apple Watch. Now, the third platform, which was now Mac OS 10. I forget the new name of it. But there is a new Mac OS 10. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head, but it's out. It's not Mac OS 10 anymore, Mac OS. I need to get used to that. But it's really cool. What they kind of added to it were a lot of continuity features that I think are cool. Like, for instance, one thing that a lot of people were speculating was with your iPhone, you were going to have the ability to unlock your Mac. And they did something that's a little bit cooler, but kind of not. Basically, what they did was if you have an Apple Watch, you can use your Apple Watch to unlock the Mac. It automatically recognizes. You don't have to tap anything. Just the fact that you're wearing your Apple Watch and you're nearby your Mac, that's enough for it to unlock and know that you're you. It's kind of disappointing because not everyone has an Apple Watch, but it's kind of, I guess, more Apple's like secret mind tricks to get you to buy an Apple Watch. But it's still a really cool feature and a really welcome change that I liked. I think it's cool because, of course, I do have an Apple Watch, so I love that idea. I can't wait to get a beta of that so that way I can try that out. But that was one change that I thought was really cool. Of course, the other big change is, of course, Siri. Siri's finally being added to the Mac, and its uses are pretty useful. It's got a lot of neat little tricks that you can do with it. It's a lot more innovative. Something that I think you just have to get used to. I couldn't see myself using it too much. I don't know. That's probably just me. I would probably have to play around with it more and I will, whenever I get the public betas, talk about that a bit more. In addition to that, Apple finally kind of, I don't know how I'm going to explain this next part. Basically, with the new iPad Pro, Apple has a feature to where any movie that's playing can be swiped off to the side in a little tiny corner, and you can do other stuff in the background. They added this to the Mac, which is pretty cool. Any type of video you're watching can be displayed off to the bottom or anywhere you want. And that's cool for me because I'm someone who's usually up late studying, doing whatever with my computer, and it's really nice to usually have. I usually like watching things, so it's nice to have something off to the side to watch whenever I'm working on this. So I like that. I think that's a cool feature. I will definitely use that. Trying to think what else. Nothing really too major aside from that. Siri integration, the new unlocking, things like that. In addition to, of course, the new look of the new Mac OS. But other than that, there wasn't really too many changes to it. But I still think that there is more, of course, that I'm forgetting. Oh, I'm sorry, I did forget one. Apple Pay is finally being added to the MacBook. I'm not someone that uses Apple Pay, but I'm sure for those who do, it's really cool the way they have it working to where basically you use your iPhone or you use your Apple Watch to do the actual officially signing off on using the Apple Pay. But it's a really cool feature. It really welcome. I like it, and I think, of course, I'm not someone that uses Apple Pay, but if I was, I can see that being really cool. I'm trying to think of what else. It was very heavily centered on iOS, which is what I'll get to next. But as far as I can tell, Mac, there was not too many newer features that I could think of. They did talk about the Photos app, kind of with the Mac, kind of with the iPhone. I'll kind of get into that. I guess I can do that now that I'm bridging into the iPhone. Photos got a huge update. You can edit a lot more things like live photos. You can do a lot more things with the photos you take. Is more organized. You can edit more. They definitely added a bunch of new features to the Photos app. Now, moving on to iOS. iOS did see a lot of big changes as well. And it has a new look. The new wallpaper is kind of similar to an Android wallpaper in the sense that it's kind of like an ocean-y background, and it's like an overview of an ocean. I thought it looks nice, but of course it felt very similar to Android. And there's a lot of things that Apple is bringing that's kind of reminiscent of other third-party apps like Snapchat, Android features, things like that. It's a lot that Apple's bringing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot one feature for the Apple Watch. They're adding a new thing to the messaging portion where you can actually write on the watch, and you don't, and that spells out a word, and then that word gets put in. Android has something similar to this, and I don't know. I think it was just a welcome change because I'm someone who usually doesn't use dictation that much, but I would love to. But I like writing on the watch, so that's something that I would find interesting. But that was the other cool new feature for the Apple Watch. Going back to the iOS, um, I can't really think of too much. I'm trying to think of as many because there was quite a bit. One of the main focus points of iOS was the messaging app. They're going to change up iMessage. Not too much, but they're going to add a bunch of cool new features like the way the messages pop up. It's going to be a lot more vibrant. It's going to be a lot more personal. Apple just added a lot of customizability. They also added this new feature where it's kind of similar to Snapchat where you can take a picture of yourself and like doodle the picture, add in emojis. Very reminiscent of Snapchat, but it's still a welcome change to iOS. And it's going to be one thing that's going to make iMessage a lot more cooler. You can order stuff from iOS. You can like have a group of people looking in on like a menu and ordering out takeout food. That's one new feature on it. In addition to this, more Force Touch integration. I didn't really get to see too much of the Force Touch integration, but there is a little bit more expansion with Force Touch. It's not to the point to where you'd want it to be, I think, but it's getting there, and I think that's cool. I think that they're added in with a lot more like of the first party apps. And from there it's a little bit more useful. That was one change. The other big change was there's going to be changes coming to the News app. Notifications are handled a lot better on the lock screen for the iPhone. They don't come up as like banners that like fade out the background anymore. They're just banners that are there. And it's very easy to interact with them and to go into the apps and do a lot of things from the lock screen. Apple, I think that's something that's pretty cool because I'm someone who usually doesn't like to unlock my phone. I usually kind of like just having it locked on the table. And so from there I can kind of just edit it the way I want to. But still, I thought that was a cool welcome change. I'm trying to think. Oh, one new feature that kind of works between the iPhone and the Mac is that it's a lot easier to use like iCloud Drive and transfer files to and from. That's one new feature. Basically, every document that's going to be on your Mac is going to be accessible from your iPhone, or most of them at least, and I think that's really cool. I'm someone who personally does take advantage of iCloud Drive, and I'm constantly moving files back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and editing them on my phone when I'm in school and I can't have out my Mac, and then the second I get home, editing them on my Mac. I do that quite a bit, and I think that that's something that I'm going to take advantage of. In addition to that, Apple Music saw a refresh. Now, I'm okay with Apple Music before. I never used Spotify, so I don't know what I'm missing. So I'm okay with Apple Music, but Apple changed it, and I'm not too sure I like the way they changed it up. They just added, they just, they changed it up in a way that's difficult for me to explain. That's something that you kind of have to look at on your own. But it's just different fonts, and then the coolest new feature to Apple Music, really, it's not darker, it's still bright and out there, but the coolest new feature is lyrics being added to the songs. That's something I liked. That's pretty cool. Trying to think of any other cool new features. There are quite a bit that I just can't think of at this point in time, especially since the video is pretty long already. But I think Apple really brought it this Worldwide Developers Conference. One thing they talked about towards the end was coding their Swift app. They talked about Swift, how they released a new app for the iPad that's more centered on getting younger generations into coding. And I think that that's pretty cool. I think it's very innovative of Apple, and I think that's a neat idea. I don't know if it's going to take or not. My opinion, it could, but I don't know how long it's going to be. And honestly, I don't know how many kids are going to be that fascinated in coding. I don't know. That's my opinion on that, but I think it's really cool what Apple's trying to implement that, and that they want it to become like an official class in schools, and they want more schools to take advantage of it. I think that's cool. I think it's great that they're seeing that as a future, and I think it's good that they're kind of getting their foot in the door with that, and I think if they push it a little bit more, it might possibly happen. But anyways, that's kind of my first impressions of the Worldwide Developers Conference. I just finished watching it, and that's kind of my reactions. I liked it. I think Apple's headed in the right direction finally, and I'm really hoping that this kind of innovation they had with the software translates into their hardware in the fall whenever they release out the new iPhones, the new Macs, and possibly the new Apple Watch. Don't know about that yet, but more on that later. Anyways, MC Squared, thanks you guys for listening. Signing out. Peace.